God. Hi, my name is Victor Manuel.
And how long have you been dancing?
Oh dear God. Since 1973.
Wow. And how did you get started? Who were some of your early inspirations?
Nijinsky and Nijinsky and Nureyev. You know, way back in the silent films. Because I was a street dancer prior to being a trained dancer, so for me it was the movies, the musicals. You know, West Side Story, Seven Brides or Seven Brothers, you know, things like that. Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire.
Growing up as dancers, we all go through that phase with our parents or just our peers are saying, oh, dancing is just a hobby. Tell me about your transition from taking it from a hobby into actually making it a career with some longevity and how you went about doing that.
Huh. Well, for me, it's interesting that you asked that question because for me, it's a different point of view of where I came from because I came from, like I said, it's street dancing, and the situation that triggered that is I used to do some folk dancing when I was younger, you know, and I had scholarships to go to ballet companies in Mexico for folk dancing, but then at the same time I was a Mexican cowboy, you know, with the big hats and the ropes and the horses. So the bullying started coming in, unfortunately, because I was figuring out that I was gay, you know, and back in the 70s and 60s, there was no really out if you were going to end up accepting the fact that you were gay, you know, because it wasn't a safe atmosphere to be who you needed to be. So, to cut the long story short, I ended up going, my dad sold my horse. I got upset with my dad, and he sold my horse because he found out. And through having a fight with him, I ended up just meeting a friend in high school and going to a club, a gay club on Highland, Paradise Ballroom, I think it was, and running into two guys that happened to be very iconic in the style that I do, which is punking whacking. Punking originally is the name of it. And it was behavior movement, you know, because as I grew up idolizing these movie people, they also were doing stuff that I could relate to, which was behavior and basically acting out on the dance floor or mimicking professional dancers, because we had no training. So that said, we became a nucleus of people, about 7 of us, that were always doing this style. And what changed for me was when everybody started coming into the clubs trying to learn how to do what we were doing, when in reality we were just interpreting our surroundings or escaping in our brain and pretending we were movie stars or dancers or, you know, whatever we wanted to be to escape from the outside world. And what changed for me for this was when I happened to be asked to audition for Diana Ross. They came to another club that used to do this dance, which, by the way, is where the dance reached the zenith. Like, it plateaued, like it became huge. Geno's too. And there was a choreographer that was looking for dancers for Diana Ross for a Vegas special. And we all auditioned. And I ended up not getting it because I also was taking classes to learn tricks to win contests. You know, because if you were only able to do one style or one thing, then, you know, you could only basically have a heads up on so many situations. So I would go to ballet class, I would go to jazz class, and using my folk dance background, besides the dance that we were doing, which was behavior, movement, you know, all of this, I started taking jazz classes. So there was a guy, and I also did gymnastics. So there was a guy, Lonnie, who got the job, my friend Lonnie, and he was a gymnast. So they took him because he was a better gymnast, of course, than I was, because I was his forte. He was also a punker. And Billy Goodson, who was a co-choreographer, was a jazz dancer doing the style that I did. So he went because he was obviously the assistant choreographer, and then Lonnie went because he was a better gymnast. So a friend of mine from that group was looking for dancers for Grace Jones. So he took me on the road with him back in, I want to say 78. And I had never seen this, I mean, I've heard about this woman, you know, but I never met her till I got the job. I went to New York, we did the show. Comes out this amazing looking woman with a shaved head and a horse outfit and horse tail, and we're on stage and we're in a gay club, and we're just, she said, whatever you do, I trust you. So we just used to dance, you know, punk, whack, couple dance, do all of that with my friend Danny. And I remember one time her and Jean-Paul Gaultier, who was her fiancé, who's a famous French artist, said to me, he goes, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you are, it seems to be very captivating, and you should you should train. You should not just do, you should train. You should seek out the professionalism of this. And that's when I started, I think back in '79, when I came back from the road with her, I started training. You know, taking classes, getting scholarships. And for me, because it was such an escape from everything that I was going through, the bullying and everything, it was a safe haven. It was something I could control. You know, you go out to the outside in the streets, and I grew up in projects, and you know, there's gangs, and you know, everybody's calling you puto, fag, all of that. And going into a dance class was the only place where I had control. If I wanted to plie, if I wanted to go kick higher, if I wanted anything I wanted to do technically, I had control. So anything that I could do to give me facility for my body to do what I wanted to do, which is expression, I did it. And I started working. You know,
piggybacking off of that, you said working, meaning that becoming a professional. Can you talk about the different stages that you've seen dance go through in the industry, as far as they're trying to unionize it now, and just the different things, the different fights that they've had to go through, you know, to get paid? Even, I know it's probably the same fight that you guys were having back then.
Yeah. See, I knew nothing about this, because I know that when I was with Grace, I worked with her from '78 through 1980 almost, you know, back and forth and taking class. And, you know, even if I would go into a little town, I would go find out and do a little class. And so she would pay us model rates. You know, I had no idea that you can get paid for this. So she would pay us a per diem, which I found out was they have to pay you for food. She would pay us a per diem for the day, and then she would pay us for the show if we were on stage. So the per diem, let's just say that I went to New York for 5 days. I got paid 5 days for per diem, which is food. But if I only did one show, I only got paid for one show. And since she was a model, she paid us runway fee, which was, I think, $50 or $100 for the show. Which back then in the 70s, huge. Because here I am, no training, and I'm getting paid, and I'm on Studio 54, and I'm, you know, in front of stage with people going crazy. So then when I started training, I realized that you had to belong to a union if you were an actor, or if you were a singer, or if you were on Broadway. So that's when I started learning about the people that got the union cards, even though they were just dancers, were the ones that were getting more work, because there was, you know, cattle calls, and there was union call. And the cattle call literally means you're there like a bunch of cows. That's really what the word comes from. And if you're good enough, they get to see you, and then they pick you to go into the union group. A union group gets called at a certain time, and after you build a name for yourself, the choreographers just call you. We didn't even have agents back then, you know. So the first job that I ever did that I realized the severity or the seriousness of the union was Staying Alive. You know, I went to audition, I knew of the choreographers, and I was like 500 something number, which is ridiculous. That's how many dancers they'd seen. So I remember